Yo, JD here, Limitless. And as you can see, we are back on F1 2021 as always. And in today's video, we are doing another 25% race, starting on the back row of the grid in the Forza Ferrari after this weekend's opening round in the Formula 1 2022 season. So a little bit of inspiration there. So in these hobbies here, as a couple of people are just falling asleep here. So as always, we're going to be showcasing the entire race. And Imola, said it in the past, is one of the most intense tracks to race at, as we have got an illegal overtake on a ghost car, which is absolutely wonderful to see. But I actually think he's just reconnected back to the lobby. So as always, we're going to do our best as we're trying to go really outsung on the two cars here, and we're going quite well, going off the track again, and what happens, another illegal overtake, so we have to let this guy back through. So not particularly the cleanest first lap in the world, but we've managed to dismantle that McLaren. So yeah, as I was saying, as always, we're going to showcase the entire race. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you're entertained as well. And yeah, it's been a while since I have been around Imola, and I've very, very rarely used this Ferrari. As I said, mainly because of the result on the weekend, felt like giving it a go. And of course, all these cars in here are equal cars. But please let me know down below in the comments if you feel the equal cars do in fact all feel the same, or do you think sometimes it's a little bit of a placebo effect? In my opinion, I think you can get exactly the same lap time with every car. I think mainly due to the wheelbases. Some have shorter than others, that it actually reacts a little bit differently over the curbs. That's something I found personally, and I think that's always been involved in the F1 games for some quite considerable time. But please let me know what your thoughts are on that itself. So as always, we're going to be on the medium tyre doing the alternate strategy, which is usually not the strongest strategy in the world around here, and most people in here are people who are members of my YouTube. But these are open lobbies as well, so if you'd like to join these, then make sure you follow me on Instagram as well. I always post when I have my open lobbies up and live. As we managed to take another position, so now we're up into P10, and Andrev, my teammate, is leading this race. But as we go across the line, we set the fastest lap of 17.8. And driving against Ferrari, it felt very, very nice actually. In fact, as I said, it's something I haven't really driven that often, but in this scenario it felt really, really nice. Coming through into the end of sector 1, just see if we could try and make a move on here. So go around the outside of Damien, and let's see if we can make the move stick. He's on the soft tires, we're on the mediums, and we have made that move stick. So very, very nice overtake there. We've got Matt up ahead, very fast driver himself, and Yoni Dovzan, if I can pronounce that correctly. Seen him many times in my videos. He's usually called Moonfall, and he's a very, very fast driver himself. So got to make sure we're keeping tabs on these two guys, because I think they are probably the two other fastest drivers in this lobby. As you can see, the Mercedes light up ahead, red light is flashing, which means he is under 10% of the battery power. So we're going to use a little bit of our ERS here, but don't really have to use that much, as we're going to turn it off as soon as we get alongside him. And you can see the straight line speed, since he has no battery, is going to be absolutely nothing in the straight line. So now we've gone up into P8 in this race. Someone has reset back to the track here, and now we are behind the Red Bull, who seems to be suffering with a little bit of lag. So exactly where we want to be at this stage of the race. And he's going to try and make a move on the Alfa Romeo, which, speaking of Alfa Romeo, they did actually incredibly well this weekend. So again, please give me your thoughts of what you thought of this weekend's Grand Prix. Ferrari look very, very strong, and I think they might become great again, potentially. They seem to get off a very, very, well, the perfect start, in fact. They got a pole, fastest lap, 1-2, maximum constructors. Yeah, it was a big, big blow for Red Bull what happened at the weekend. So we're going to try and continue that here at Imola. And, excuse me, got a bit of a cold at the moment. But now we are in the DRS zone of Moonfall up ahead, as Cam has set the fast upper race with a 17.7 as he's gone straight on into the gravel here. So I'm not quite sure what's happened. And then he's just been pushed out onto the gravel by Bo Wicks, if I can say that name properly. So we're going to tread with a little bit of caution when we are going past this Alfa Romeo. And you can't quite see the map because my camera is covering it. But the leader isn't too far down the road at this stage. So we're just going to take our time and hopefully make a nice easy overtake on this Alfa Romeo. But he is actually coming up to the back of Topstar ahead of him. So he's probably going to get the DRS on that car. And it always seems to be the case when I'm battling with people that they get within the DRS zone of the car ahead, which makes it significantly more difficult to overtake. But you might notice again that his red light is flashing. So very similar to what Matt had. We don't have to use that much ERS to get past here, and you can see even with DRS he's just much slower in a straight line because of the battery being very depleted. So coming up through into here now, getting the move done, and we're up into P4 in this race. And we actually have Squares up ahead in P2, who is another regular driver who is very, very fast himself. But you might have noticed that the Haas has a red light flashing as well. But we're going to be nice and patient here, as it looks like he's going very, very slow at this moment in time. And you can see we're actually losing quite a bit of time up towards the top two in this race. So we're going to do a similar approach. We're just going to take our time here. And that's one of the main things I said in a video recently, is about taking as much time as you need. A lot of people try and rush the overtake and rush the progress in the race. So as we're coming through into here, I believe we're probably not even going to be using that much of the ERS. So we use a little boost coming off the corner, then getting the DRS zone, and then we're going to turn off the ERS here now. You can see his red light is flashing. And now we've gone up into P3 in this race. So now we have Squares and Andrev up ahead on the same tyre strategy. So this is all going to be about how much pace the other has over the other. And the gap is 2.5 seconds and 4 seconds up towards my teammate. So we're just going to try and push as hard as we can whilst limiting the amount of ERS that we are using. And you can already see we've actually pulled a second away from Haas up behind, and Moonfall had a little bit of that instant earlier, is over 2 seconds behind. So coming through the chicane, I was quite cautious through here because I hadn't done this track for some quite considerable time. I think it's one of the most technical tracks to master, I think, on this game. There's very, very little room for error, and managing the car is actually very, very difficult as well, especially with the tyre temps, as we do set the fastest lap of the race with the aid of the DRS we had on the previous lap. And the top two also have a 3-second time penalty now, which has made our life a bit easier. But as always, we would like to try and win this on track as much as possible. So you can see we're not really using too much ERS. We're just going to try and conserve the battery as much as possible, because Imola is a very demanding circuit when it comes to battery usage. And you can see Moonfall behind is actually starting to close on me ever so slightly. So it looks like he is using a bit more of his battery. So I'm not really too concerned at this stage unless he gets in my DRS zone. You can see we do a purple middle sector anyway. And I think this is actually perfect timing. We're going to get DRS from this ghost car. So the detection point is coming up right about here. So we make sure we slow down enough just to make sure we get within that. And Moonfall isn't going to have DRS on me. And you'll be able to see on the straight line, compare our time to a leader of my teammates, of how much time we're going to gain in a straight line. We're gaining over 3 to 4 tenths with the benefit of that DRS. You can see really throwing in the car here as Moonfall has actually decided to box already. So the goal here was to try and get within the DRS zone of these cars up ahead. But the problem is that my teammate is here, and I usually like to go a little bit longer in the race, but we've already done quite a few laps on these mediums. Moonfall's going to get a bit of an undercut on myself, so I knew I really had to react, most likely this lap. So I was really hoping that my teammate would actually continue for another lap. And you can see getting a really good exit coming off this corner, and we're going to get within the detection point of squares up ahead. So coming through into the penultimate corner, get a pretty nice run. And what did we do here? Did we continue or not? No, we don't. We actually decide to box, because then I wouldn't have been close enough to my teammate. There would have been no guarantee to actually overtake him throughout the next lap. And then if he boxed, I would actually have to go to lap 12, where Moonfall and Squares, Moonfall would have had like a 3-lap undercut on me. And he is a very, very fast driver. So is Squares. I don't think I would have... I might have had enough pace to catch up, but with Imola, you have to be so careful with your battery. Otherwise, you're in a world of trouble. As you can see, Moonfall, we managed to make the overcut work. Well, not the overcut, but he did do an undercut, but it wasn't enough to get track position. And if we stayed out another 2 laps, then I think we would have been well over 2 or 3 seconds behind with 3 laps to go. So the goal now is to try and stay within Squares' DRS. And you can see we've got a good amount of the battery on board as well. And you will see my teammate will most likely be undercutted quite severely as well, unless he had a lot of ERS to play with, which I suspected he didn't since he was the leader of the race. I think he's going to struggle to be quite close when we come out of here. So right now I'm in the perfect position, being the second man in the DRS train, and this is exactly where you want to be. So coming up through into the last corner, I don't think we're going to be using that much of the overtake. A little boost coming off the exit, and no, we actually do decide, so ignore completely what I'm saying. I'm going to try and make this move. You can see my teammate hasn't even come out of the pits. Now he's come out of the pits now. And you can see he's been undercutted by 3 drivers there, and he is over 2 seconds behind Moonfall as well. He's almost 3 seconds behind, so that shows how powerful the undercut can be around this circuit. So right here now, I think I'm just going to try and go for the fastest lap of the race. So you take a bit more of the ERS, and let's see if I can actually break out of this DRS zone as well. So the gap is about 7 tenths of a second. Coming into probably the hardest corner on the track, really nailing that quite nicely. But then Squares actually gets a better run. Actually, in fact, it's Moonfall who has now gone into P2 in this race. So we're going to keep on using our ERS just to see how much faster we can go on the lap as Man One Love Coffee joined the lobby. Very interesting name. To go come across the line, what time is this going to be? It is going to be a 15.2, which is a pretty fast lap to have in a 25% race. So now it's all about just timing and positioning ourselves in the correct place for the last lap. We do have a lap fresher tyres than Moonfall up behind, so we should have slightly better traction and grip. So at this stage of the race, I wasn't really too concerned if he would overtake me or not, as Man One Love Coffee has now left the session. But yeah, I wasn't really too bothered if he would overtake me, because I still have a healthy amount of ERS on board, and I know it's probably best that if I'm the car behind going into the last lap. So let's see if he decides to overtake me coming through into this next lap, where there will be 3 laps of this race remaining. So coming through into here, going a little bit deep, so still a little bit rusty from driving this circuit. It's actually been quite a while since I've driven around this track. And let's see if he goes for the overtake now, and I think the answer is no. He decides to actually stay behind, so not interested in overtaking at this stage of the race. And you can see how hard it is to actually save the battery around this track. And that's why quite often I feel the alternate strategy, especially in a league race or even in esports, isn't that beneficial. Because although you'll be fast at the end of the race, you just have to use all of your ERS to make at least one overtake, and then you're running on fumes. You have absolutely no battery to use at all. So I always think if you can start at the front of this track, then it's probably best that you can start on the soft tyres in this race. So coming into the penultimate corner, coming towards the end of lap 13, let's see if he decides to overtake me this time, and getting a good exit off here now. Does he decide to go for the overtake, so we're not using any of it ourselves? And does it look like he's going for the overtake? Let's see, does he go down the inside now? Yes, he does, in fact, so we're just going to let him have his position. So it looked like he didn't use any of the ERS himself, so it looks like he might be potentially struggling a little bit on the battery, which I always hope for when I'm doing online lobbies. So now we're on lap 14, and we're just going to stay behind and probably wait for the last lap of this race. But I think you can see we definitely have a little bit more grip than the Red Bull right now here, and our ERS has gone back up to 50% once again. Now coming through into chicane, a very, very difficult chicane, trying to get a really good exit coming off this corner. You can see we're still not using any of the battery pack. Coming into the penultimate corner, and manages to do that quite nicely, but we actually get a 3-second time penalty now, which I was a bit complex where I actually got the second warning from, but we have a 3-second time penalty now. So now we're actually going to go for the overtake and see what we can do on this last lap. So the only person who doesn't have a penalty is Moonfall up behind us. So the goal now is to try and stretch him as much as possible, and maybe hope that he gets a 2-second penalty at least, and then we'll try and extend this gap to at least 1 second. Square's just retired from this race, so that is the goal now. Try and get the gap to at least 1 second, and just pray that he gets a penalty in this race. So coming through into here now, we're going to be pushing as much as we possibly can. Get a really good exit, amazing exit off that corner. Now going into this final chicane, navigating through here, quite nicely as well. Now we decided to use a bit of the ERS. And now we're going to go into the last lap. And let's see if we could do enough to even win this race. So coming through onto the main straight, using the ERS here now. And the gap is just over 4/10 of a second. So he's using that DRS quite nicely. Now this is where we need to push super hard. Really hustling the car. Come through to here. But now he has a 3-second time penalty himself. So now it is all completely even going into this last lap. And then coming through into here. Going into there. But let's see what happens here. He dives standing inside. So red arrow just coming absolutely out of nowhere. But unless he gets a great exit off the chicane, the final chicane, I think it should be us. But then the game freezes, which I wasn't very happy with. So I have no idea what was happening there. And getting a really good exit coming off this corner. Now this is the only really overtaking opportunities on the exit of this corner. So do we do this quite well? The answer is yes, we do that extremely well. Now we're going to come into the penultimate corner of this track. So all of a sudden that actually turned quite intense out of nowhere thanks to the game. And coming out of here, we managed to do the last to first in the Ferrari. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that. I really hope you enjoyed this weekend's Grand Prix. Thank you so much for support on the channel. And I will be catching you very soon. Peace.